Very well, welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I apologise for my haircut. Actually, I haven't had a haircut, but I will have a haircut in just, hopefully a few days. My name is Alan Moore, and I'm delighted in a moment to be joined by two absolutely sensational co-hosts for this evening. A lot has been going on. A lot has been happening in the world of sports. On a cycling topic, because we will be speaking about it a bit later on. The Vuelta, I was going to Giro d'Italia, the Vuelta de España has started, and already some good news for Irish cycling in that, with Sam Bennett sprinting out to the front. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Good hope and good news on the front, or on the near front for Brittany Griner. It looks like she will be getting her move back to America. We'll speak about that in a little while as well, because a lot of people are kind of getting a bit unhappy with it, and she isn't getting great support. We're going to speak about Jim Ratcliffe, of course. He is the owner of Ineos. They do all the fracking and all chemical kind of stuff. He is looking to take over Manchester United, but there's a lot to be gone through first, and of course people are doubting that he has the financial wherewithal to bring this about. What else have we got? Well, we also have, of course, a huge fight last night, Usyk Joshua, which of course ended in a strange decision for Usyk, as in that it was made it to be closer than it actually was. But well, it was in Saudi Arabia and it was a British boxer, so I guess it was a home fight for him. What else happened in the world of sports? Of course, the El Chopico was being played today. We'll speak about that in just a moment as well. And we have a terrific interview. It'll be in part 2 of the show today. It's part 1. So it's in part 2. So it's part 1 of a 3-part special with the pro cyclist Joe Papp. Look him up before you start to listen, because the interview gets quite deep quite quickly, and I know you'll enjoy it. So we're going to put it in part 2, and then my co-hosts are going to discuss it with me then as we go along. So straight away, I'm going to bring in my co-hosts, Isil Cody, our legal eagle, and our expert from the kingdom, Keane McGivney. I'll start with ladies first. Isil, how are you doing?
I thought you were going to say the kingdom of, I know we're talking about Saudi Arabia this evening, but the kingdom of Kerry, just to be clear. I am good. I have had a late night of boxing and MMA, which basically means I am delighted with life today.
Okay, so that's a good one. Keane, how are you getting on? Keane, you have your microphone muted. So you sounded great. But
that's a great start, yeah. That would be me, all right, yeah. Delayed start, that's me. It's been most of my 32 years on this planet, delayed starts. Yeah, not too bad, Alan, not too bad.
Okay, I mentioned my own haircut, or my lack of a haircut. You got a good haircut. Why did you get so short at the end of the summer? That's meant to be a June haircut or even a May one.
Easy maintenance, Alan. Simple as that.
Well, yeah, I guess. Isel, you'd never go in for a Sinead O'Connor, would you?
I wouldn't go in for a Sinead O'Connor. There was a phase you might remember in the early noughties where a lot of us went with shorter hair. It was inspired by Victoria Beckham. There is a period of my life where there are no photos in our house on agreement of my age at the time between my mother and myself that we never want to remember that haircut.
That's fair enough. Okay. Before we go any further, before we start to speak about our main topics, of course, Leeds shocked a sort of a side with a deficit. Chelsea, they beat them 3-0 today. Also, West Ham went down 2-0 to Brighton. Newcastle and Man City in the El Chopico, a 3-3 draw. And Arsenal, of course, winning yesterday 3-0 against Bournemouth. Tomorrow, though, big one, Manchester United and Liverpool. East, I'm going to ask you on that one. Tottenham, of course, won yesterday, so you're in good mood anyway, as well as all the MMA stuff and the boxing. United or Liverpool tomorrow, is it going to be another disaster for Ten Hag, or is Klopp going to be getting the shot?
In terms of what goes on in the field, I expect we will have a quite dull draw, and I think more of what we're going to be talking about is what happens or doesn't happen in the stands. The reality is, we now are getting to a stage where Liverpool United games are becoming synonymous when they're at home, with United fans using it as an opportunity to protest the owners. So I think that's what tomorrow is going to be about, and I think the football will be overshadowed. Liverpool are a much better team in terms of performance, even with what happened in the last week or so. But in terms of a team, Liverpool are much superior. I just think the antics off the field are going to what's really going to be mattering tomorrow, and perhaps cameras more so on to see the reaction of United staff and players if there is a walkout or if there is unrest before. Because let's not forget, if things go really south before the match, we may not see a game played.
Well, that's true because the United fans and Liverpool fans have very recent histories of misbehaving. Keane, in that case, I mean, is everything playing into Liverpool's hands because they've had a bad start to the season? Klopp was under a huge amount of pressure. Nunez, of course, was sent off for acting an idiot, getting wound up. Could this be a chance maybe for United to get one over on their red rivals?
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for United tomorrow night, particularly at home. I know, as Isolde said there, you will have whatever they decide to do. Will they do it at half time? You'll have protest maybe before the game or whatever they decide to do. That's a sideshot. I think Manchester United need to win tomorrow night. Highly probable that Liverpool probably will find a way to win tomorrow night. They've had a far better start than Man United, but definitely from a United perspective, 3 points is imperative. Yes, they've had a number of off-field issues. Again, they've been linked with a number of players. They've got Casemiro signed. I don't know, is that deal may or may not have been completed in time for tomorrow night. So that is another thing to be added in to see if he has been registered in time, and if that deal has been completed, will he get a starting berth if that signing has been completed, Alan?
Okay, yeah, Casemiro, a great player to bring in, and it'll be great to see if he does make it. So I think it's a real upgrade for the side. Actually, I think one of the best signs of the season. To move from Real to United is very good. So straight away into the man with the I think called a ho-ho haircut is the Cossack haircut. Usyk is no more Cossack than himself, but it looked well on him. Isa, starting with you, I mean, just simply on the decision, was it as close as it was made out to be?
I'll start by saying no. The decision was an absolute robbery in the sense of what should have been a momentous night, which was a clear victory for Usyk, and should have been a clear victory on all cards. When the first scorecard was read out, I think collectively boxing fans who have been watching for any extended period of time got that sense of, we're going to see what happened with Catterall Taylor. We're going to see that moment where a man could be robbed on the scorecards. And there was I would say a collective sharp intake of breath. Now, I actually was watching the fight with a non-boxing fan here, my younger brother. So he's watched a lot of fights, but he's not a fan. And he was like, even with the commentary on, when we got to 5 rounds, there was a shift from what the Sky commentators were saying. Up until then, they were very much saying, oh, AJ's done this, AJ's putting pressure on. They seem to be ignoring what Usyk was doing to that point. And I don't know who, whether it was production or someone, at the end of round 5, they suddenly changed their tune, and there was a moment of revisionist history where they started behaving like they were actually watching what the rest of us were seeing. But even in terms of the coverage in between rounds, it was all clips of AJ's shots, and a lot of them weren't landing. AJ had some success in maybe 2, possibly 3 rounds where he actually had success, as opposed to just being thereabouts. But like the 9th round, strong round for AJ, easy to see it for him. I at best could give him 3 rounds, maybe if I was an absolute push 4. But I think the scorecards are a sad reflection, and they were across the board last night. I'll talk about that a little bit later, just about what went on in the undercard. But last night's scorecards were a very poor reflection, and the conduct afterwards, I don't necessarily blame AJ, but the conduct of AJ and no one intervening. So I suppose it's done the rounds all day today. There are memes, there's the whole shoot and shebang. The press conference was something similar, where basically AJ went into the ring, dropped the belts, which Derek Chisora was actually in the ring, and Derek Chisora was the one kind of picking them up. And when Del Boy is your moment of sanity, that's not a good sign if he's that member of your team. And then went on a rant on the mic for quite some time, and it was a very difficult watch, I think.
Yeah, we're just at that in the moment with the belts and then sort of strange interaction with Usyk afterwards. We split it right now, so.
And the WBA Super, I think. What's he doing here?
I don't care about strong. I have that skill.
And he threw them down.
Skills in boxing.
Why?
You're not strong. How did you beat me?
I'm not sure his team understood it.
Let's do the skills. Let's do the. I have character. Okay. Let's do determination. Listen. Listen. I just want to say.
It looked keen that Usyk was doing a very famous, the Scousers like calm down, or in in Liverpool saying, calm down, calm down. He was trying to calm him down. It was a bit of an overreaction at the end of it all. Is it just a case he's just like he was flying high at that moment and wanted to make a statement?
Yeah, but I think given that you're beaten in the fight, as you all said earlier on, scorecards were probably a little bit off, but you're beaten. Take your beating, step away. Yeah, congratulate him or whatever you want to do in the immediate aftermath, but step out of the ring or step to one side. Don't pick the microphone up as he did and go off on a rant for 2.5 minutes, making sense but making no sense at the same time. So definitely somebody should have had the decency, I'll go as far as to say, to just put a hand on the shoulder and just say, just step away now, please, and allow the winner to take the adulation for whatever length of time, and just let the adrenaline leave his body, and then maybe 15-20 minutes afterwards, then have a few words away from the ring. But it was just probably the strangest 2.5 minutes I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it was an odd one. And you said, I mean, the press conference after was very strange. And I mean, Usyk, I've always, found him. He's very, very direct and very, very straight. And even when the start of everything kicked off in Ukraine, he personally, contacted Vladimir Putin to stop it, because again, he always says that he has joint citizenship. His wife has Russian citizenship. They speak Russian. He grew up speaking Russian. He himself knows what's going on. He's not kind of one of these people who piggybacked on, virtue signaling. He's actually, he's tried to do his best and play it down as much as possible. In saying that, it's not like there were questions being raised when it was I think Joshua said that what was happening in Ukraine is not nice, and people started to laugh at that. And someone like a Saudi friend of mine said like that it was very funny he's saying that, and the boxing match took place in Saudi Arabia. And Yemen, like I lived in Jeddah, Yemen, I drove down to Jeddah on a weekend. So I don't know, it felt very, very strange. I didn't watch the fight purposely because I felt very icky with it.
So there were a lot of awkward moments in his speech, but there were a lot of more awkward moments for the entire evening, I think, because of the situation. The location was always going to pose a difficulty to a lot of people, and then when you added in the escalation in Yemen, it was all very strange. The entire week leading up to it, I suppose when I saw an interview with Prince Nazim, who's obviously of Yemeni extraction there, and like complimenting what was going on, everything felt weird. But in terms of AJ's speech at the end, I think there was actually one noticeable thing, and perhaps it was picked up on certain news outlets, but when he took the microphone, rather than react as Usyk would have been very entitled to and go off on one, or indeed lunge for it or whatever, Usyk was very calm. But the one thing he seemed very intent on doing was taking the Ukrainian flag, which at that point AJ had draped around his own shoulders, because there had been a nice poignant moment at the end where it was a clear show of unity, and he got it back basically. Usyk went and leaned and took the flag back, and I think that was look, if you're going to go on your rant, please don't do it with my flag around your shoulders. And I think there was an immense level of maturity from him. But I also think there was, when Usyk came out to the ring, you could hear booing. And to be honest, you couldn't hear much by way of crowd noise all evening. And it was only scattered through. But AJ seems to have really, like, even when he was leaving after having lost and had his rant, he was signing autographs for fans. There was still that level of interest in him. I don't know what message having the fight there can ever give when you're trying to promote colours of freedom on your jersey, which is what was written on all the Team Usyk jersey.
I know, yeah. But look, we've said this before. Sports doesn't do reflection. It doesn't, basically, as we know this, and we'll come on to this in a moment with Man United fans, if I said it before, if ISIS rocked up at Old Trafford, United fans say, come in, we want to win like a league title. No one cares. We
saw the reaction even in Newcastle when the Saudis invested. There were people going around, and like the team had to ask people to not dress in a certain way because it was considered culturally inappropriate, because it's money that matters. And it's a bit like you focus on the wrong things. Last night was a big night for women's boxing in terms of there was the first ever professional fight in Saudi Arabia. But that doesn't change how women are treated outside of that one context. And I think we can't gloss that over, no matter how nice something looks on TV.
I agree. And look, I'm interested to see when going in, did they have to give over their passports to the Saudi sponsor or not? Because that's what people do. I did it. All guest workers do it. You go in, your first day of the job, you give your passport over. You don't get it till you leave the country, if they let you leave the country. Cian, in that, I mean, just in terms of the sort of hosting it in Saudi Arabia, it's the same as hosting it in, up in Manchester or wherever it be, or Moscow. It really doesn't make a difference. It's just two people battering the head off each other in the ring.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's just the symbolism of it over the last number of years, because everything is so revised over the last number of years. Everything is up for revision now. History is up for revision. Sporting events are up for revision. Everything is being revised, and everything has been looked into, and everything has been put under the microscope. As you say, if that happened, if that fight was in England last night, there wouldn't have been any major talk of, yes, there would have been speaking about Ukraine-Russian conflict, but there wouldn't have been half as much probably talk about it. One thing I have to say is, one thing I have spotted with certain media outlets is, particularly Manchester United and also actually Anthony Joshua, they always focus on those two teams, and Anthony Joshua is a boxer. It's absolutely amazing. The opponents of Manchester United and Alexander Usyk don't even get a look in media outlets throughout the week leading into a game, or the week leading into the fight last night, for example. And it's just something I have definitely picked up on in the last number of months, that the issues at Manchester United particularly seem to be the focus all the time, and everything else seems to be put into the background.
No, that's I think that the media have their favourites. They went.
Yeah.
BBC went all out to protect Liverpool back at the Champions League final when awkward questions been asked. They'll protect their own. So no, I'm with you on that. Isla just updated us that there has been wins for Ukraine in the high jump and Great Britain in the 4x100. Isla, is that 4x100 men's or women's?
4x100 men's has just gone off. Team GB, a very, very strong performance to win. And the Swiss athlete who came in 5th seemed to fall right on the line. Very bizarre, but a very strong performance from the Brits.
Okay. We got a message in that Usyk is a great fighter for peace. He wants to do better for all people. Yes, that's from Russia for sure. Part 2. The second one is one that I think is, we discussed this before. This is Brittany Griner. Now, the question has been, this was asked this week, and I was kind of surprised. Is she getting her WNBA salary while she's in Russian jail? The answer, the WNBA have refused to answer. This is her when she said that she testified she didn't know it was in her bag when she packed her bags. News on that very quickly is that they're in advanced talks to have her released. A lot of people are, there's been a lot of, I'll say, PR being given. Like, Cian, you mentioned about like the British media. In the American media, for example, they have been putting out these things of like that she's facing harsh treatment in Russia's brutal prison system. When that came out, a lot of people reacted quite badly to it. They're like, wait, hold on, it's not as, there's a lot more people jailed for drugs in America. And people saying that, she did the crime, she should do the time. But that's a bit cruel though, Cian, isn't it? Because, we spoke about this before. In all fairness, she's admitted her guilt. Is it maybe just the fact that it was so harsh that people are upset with the situation? Because it does look like she's going to get out.
Well, that's a great update on what was the update from a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I think it's just very, very harsh. I think it's a genuine mistake. She didn't realize it was in her bag. But again, look, it's a different jurisdiction. They have different. Russia would have different rules than what the States would have, than what Ireland would have. So you still, yes, it is extremely harsh, but you probably still have to walk that tightrope of, am I going to get myself into trouble here if the authorities do the search and see what's in the bag, and then you have to answer an awful lot of questions. So I suppose, yeah, but it is probably extremely harsh on her, and hopefully she can get out in the next number of days, if not weeks.
Okay, Issa, coming to you on this, because of course the situation is that she will be paid her salary, and it's not going to count towards her salary cap. A lot of American people from all different, I'll say all different colors, because like this really has broken into a race thing, have said that, look, she admitted her guilt, the sentence was too harsh, but people have been pointing it out, and we spoke about this before as well. Also, there is the gentleman, Mark Fogel, who got caught for the same situation with drugs in his bag, came in, he had a medical receipt for it. Of course, it doesn't count here. Saying I have a medical use, or it's for medical use only, that doesn't count in Russia. Issa, there's three main people being held here at the moment. There's Whelan, Paul Whelan, Mark Fogel, and Brittany Griner. But only Whelan and Griner are being taken back. Is that because they're more valuable to America?
From a publicity point of view, yes. In a word, the reason you focus, and I appreciate when people are saying about harsh conditions. I don't think it's fair to say, Russian prison conditions are any harsher than the US, where there's huge issues with overcrowding, and there's also a huge issue with the way people are jailed, in terms of there is a clear differentiation that your ethnicity will lead to a longer sentence. However, she is a non-Russian speaking individual who is also openly gay, who is in a Russian prison, and there are concerns. She's also high profile, and that all pushes to it being more important for America optically to bring her home. I suppose the sentence in itself was very harsh. That was potentially motivated not just by the fact that she's a high-profile individual, but the fact that she's a high-profile American individual. And I don't think we can think that didn't on some level factor into this. But then again, when you or I go to an airport, we all know that, especially actually if you're filling in anything visa-related, or for traveling into a country where visas are an entry requirement, did you pack your own bags? It's a basic, and I appreciate people forget things when in your bag, but other countries have harsher laws. Things even down to basic medication you can get in certain pharmacies may be illegal in other countries. It's about these things. You hear about, I suppose, people going into Dubai who pack things in their bags that they shouldn't, not even of drugs or those kind of things, and they have awkward incidents on their way into the country. And these things happen. But there's a level of personal responsibility. Do I think it's a good thing that she will get out? Yes, I think it's or at least not be in Russia, very positive thing. Do I think it's a fair reflection on how America allocates its PR and resources to getting people out? No, not at all.
Well, I mean, okay, when we look at it, I mean, I'll give a funny story what happened to me going to Saudi Arabia, just for it's on topic. But we're looking at it, what gets me is they're going to trade her and this guy, Paul Whelan, who was, he's there's lots of things been said about him. He was a military contractor. And he's sitting here in jail. He's going to be taken back because he was done for espionage charges here. There's a lot of things that, he had like a flash drive, it was on. It's like a very, very strange situation. Mark Fogel came in. He's a 60-year-old teacher. I can say with Andrew Wise, I've met him. I don't know him, but I've met him. I would meet him and go out a few years ago from my house, walk out. He'd be sitting there on his bike, and I'd say, "How are you doing?" And he'd be chatting with another teacher from the same school, say hello, and then gone. And it's sort of for me it was strange, the fact that I've never met Whelan, but I've interviewed Brittany Griner, so it's like of these three, I don't know, it's a bit unfair. I was going to say, well, with the situation with Saudi Arabia was I was driving back from Ireland into Saudi to Jeddah. In Germany, I stopped, and I stopped again in Croatia, but I stopped in Germany, met some friends of mine near Frankfurt. We were down, we had a couple of drinks, and the next morning I got up, had my lunch, and drove on. I got into Saudi Arabia. I was stopped at the border because when they checked the car to take your car apart, so they were checking my car and they were looking through it, and then they found a bottle, small bottle, like a really small, like this much of Jägermeister. I think I have one in my fridge now that I can show you, like a gift bottle, And I'm going, oh no, oh God, no, and it's up there. It was actually on the back window. It was on the back window. So anyway, I went in. They were like, "This is a problem," so they took me in, and the guy said to me, I still remember, he said to me, "What is this?" I said, "Look, it's a liqueur. It's like herbs. It was given to me because when I was in Germany, at the end of the night, it was cold. I drank it, and I was no, but is it like whiskey?" I said, "No, it's not whiskey." So the guy had written all the documents, like tickets and the whole lot. So I wouldn't get jail, but I would get fired and then kicked out of the country. So it was going to be a bad situation. Anyway, the guy said to me, "Look," he went like, "Is it like the other things? Is it whiskey?" And I went, "It's whiskey." And then he just took the documents, ripped them up and threw them in the bin, and then put it into his drawer. So like, when I got back to Jeddah a good few hours later, okay, I actually got lost. I went through Mecca, so I shouldn't be admitting that. So I went through Mecca by mistake. Went down back to Jeddah because I took the wrong route. And normally non-believers are not allowed to Jeddah, but I got in. But anyway, of course, as I go on a video camera, like I was recording, and then the religious police were going by in a pickup truck. But anyway, I got back to Jeddah, putting my bags into the house, and what falls out but a bottle of Jameson's, like a half liter, and I'm like, oh shit, I've been destroyed. Anyway, moving very quickly on because we have to catch up because in part 2. So very, very quickly, I want to bring in this story. This was, of course, earlier on this year when Jim Ratcliffe, he's scored knighted for his services to whatever he does, the owner of Ineos, who produce chemicals and so on. 4.2 billion they want to try and buy out Chelsea for. Of course, that was rejected out of hand. The next situation, of course, now he is looking to buy Manchester United, and there has been some pushback from some parts of the media. Can I start with you on this? From what we know of this guy, his business practices have been fairly suspect at times. In this, absolutely brilliant. I mean, I can't say it's not a takedown piece, but it was very, very good by Andy Dunn. And as he said, that this is a man who once threatened to shut down a Scottish petrochemicals plant. He's going to put out over 1,000 jobs at risk unless the trade union agreed to job cuts, a wage freeze, harsher redundancy terms, and a scrapping of a final salary pension scheme. That was one thing. He's very like a Mr. Robert Maxwell. You can Google that, folks. Keane, is this the kind of guy that Manchester United, the fans, are going to be singing for?
They probably will if the finances are the right way and things can improve, because as we've probably noticed, supporters and morality at the moment don't knit together. Not the whole lot. I'm sure a certain amount of all of the different clubs that have been taken over in recent years, there's a little bit of morality, but it's very, very difficult at the moment. I don't think, even though what you've said there is extremely difficult to hear, I don't think if he was to take the club over from the Glazers, I don't think the supporters would be too upset. I think they'd be just overly concerned with the football side of things.
So would you agree on that? Because you, like, I didn't see it, but in our private chat, you put it about the house of Maxwell and Maxwell, because immediately, as soon as I saw that, I have no time for the man whatsoever. He's been involved in so many dirty things. He's a good businessman, of course. He is a very good businessman. He gets some strange kind of investors, but I wouldn't want him next in your club.
To me, it's one of these things where, the way someone, and obviously his investing across sports has been quite prolific in terms of what he has done. Ineos are obviously synonymous with a number of sports, and more recently we've seen them cropping up on the rugby fields of the Southern Hemisphere, and obviously with cycling. But it's almost a case of, I want to own a football club. The one I want to own was probably Chelsea, because that's the one you went for first, or it was just the one that was for sale, because he's since said, I think, that he's a Man United fan. But it's a case of, you want to own a football club. Great. Ryan Reynolds bought one further down the league. Maybe start there and work up. Don't start with a team that are in disarray and that have that huge profile. But obviously, if you're that kind of person, it reminds me of the dynamic. The reason I said Maxwell, the dynamic between Robert Maxwell and Rupert Murdoch, where someone wants to get something and they don't care about the actual needs that club has. Man United fans will welcome anyone with open arms. I'd say Steve Ashley, if he was to rock up right now, they'd be like, come on in, Steve, we'll take you in. Welcome to Sports Direct.
Mike Ashley,
sorry,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, like, you might as well call him Steve because they call him an awful lot worse up in Newcastle.
My mind is distracted with it, but there is also the fear is like if United don't sell, if the Glazers stay involved and just decide to get some cash in elsewhere, what position, like United fans saying we're going to have demands of the new owners? No, you're not. No, you're not.
Listen, Isa, you've nailed it. I mean, this is a lesson to all football fans who have worked within clubs, and I've talked to people, with owners, with the top committee members, if they're society-owned clubs or community-owned clubs. They don't care. They want to win on the field or not lose. They want to keep the fans on side, but ultimately they don't give. As long as you put your money in, they don't care. Even in Germany, don't cod yourself. They do not care. It's just money and results and success. I do worry about it, but at the same time, Man United fans, they had the chance before. Rupert Murdoch was buying the club before, kind of like Maxwell, the evil side of Maxwell, the evil emperor. He was buying the club. He was pushed out because of like dodgy, his holdings in the broadcast contracts with Sky, B. But at the same time, United fans, many of them did walk away. They founded FC United of Manchester. United fans, I remember the time when they were protesting the Glazers taking it over, they could have just not gone in. We saw the Liverpool fans when they were protesting their old owners because the owners weren't, doing enough to get them to win. When new owners come in, they're all happy. They don't care where the money comes from. They do not care. And why should they? Because they know that it's a two-way street. They just don't give a damn each other. Keane, on this, will the deal go through? Will it be a payday for United?
I think so. I think the Glazers are probably going to be in a situation where they're going to be forced into probably selling the club. I know that's a very strange thing to say, but I think they'll end up in a situation where they will end up having to sell, and it more than likely at this stage will probably be Jim Ratcliffe that may take over the club. He has a lot of work to do if he does take on the club. A lot of work to do. They're talking about the training ground. They're talking about the stadium, updating both. And I'm sure the issues on the field as well are massive. Everyone seems to think that Manchester United are still the force that they were when I was a child. They're certainly not the force they were when I was a kid. They're going backwards. As an Arsenal supporter, I'm quite pleased to see them going backwards at a rate of knots, because I've had to spend the best part of 20 years watching Arsenal thinking fourth place was a trophy. So it's definitely something that's going to take a long time to fix. It's not going to be fixed in the next couple of years. It's probably going to take 10 years to fix the issues that Manchester United find themselves in recent times.
Iseult is going to cry because, of course, fourth place is a dream for her as a Spurs supporter. Iseult, are the Glazers going to sell, and is the man to buy the club, Mr. Ratcliffe? Mr.
Ratcliffe has, to my mind, opened the bidding. In the sense that everyone's now interested, and if they give any sort of whiff of interest to him, then it's a case of how quickly other parties come to the table and how quickly the Glazers want to get rid. Are they going to hang around and see if there's going to be any advances on this? Because he made his offer for Chelsea and wasn't successful, so obviously it pushed the envelope, and other people were interested in coming in. Do I think the Glazers will be gone? I don't see the Glazers giving up their cash cow as easily. I think there will be a level of, even if they go to reduce their shareholding, I just can't see them going this season.
Yeah, they're not going to go quietly into the good night.
No.
There's a question coming in from Malta. No, the person sent this in as well. So a question for both of you. Very, very quick answer before we go out to a short break. Iseult, is there a good owner in football?
As a Spurs fan, not in the Premier League.
Okay.
Ryan Reynolds. He is a team.
Ryan Reynolds. Okay, that's because he's cute and Canadian.
Exactly.
Keane, is there a good owner in football?
No.
Jesus. Okay. Right.
They're all flawed, but some are more flawed than others.
That's very true. Okay, folks, we're going to do a break right now. The guys are going to stay with us. We're going to be the background. We're going to watch an interview that we took the other day with Joe Papp. Now you're going to enjoy this for sure. It's in 3 parts, but stick with it because he's going to open up. I'm just going to ask him straight up, like, how he started doping. Then we're going to move on little by little into how he got caught. It's very seldom we actually have somebody on who speaks completely openly about it. We've had people who've spoken about how they fought to get it, why they don't like it, and so on. But this is quite deep, quite interesting. This is part one of the 3-part series. The third part will be in a couple of weeks, but it's well worth listening to. But just take your time. You can make a cup of tea, listen to this in the background, and just enjoy. So this is Joe Papp doing an interview with us on Capital Sports 3.0. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak with former pro cyclist and a member of the US national cycling team. He's Irish as well, like myself, and I think that's always a good start to any interview. Joe Papp, you're very welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. How are things over in beautiful Pennsylvania?
Alan, firstly, thank you very much for having me. It's great to finally have the chance to speak with you and be on your program. Things in Pennsylvania are beautiful. It's about 80 degrees out, sunny, unlimited sun, as they would say, and a beautiful summer day here.
Listen, Pennsylvania, I've never been to Pennsylvania. I've always had such a bit of affection for the state because of, especially with Philadelphia. Like, I have a big thing for Philadelphia. Philadelphia is Pennsylvania, am I right?
Yeah, it is. It's on the eastern half of our state. We're a very wide state, so it's about like 600 kilometers east to west, maybe. So yeah, they're in the eastern half. I'm in the western half. One of the best places in America actually to bike ride, because there are so many. My half is because we have so many rural farm roads. Because agriculture was so big here in Western Pennsylvania that there are just tons of routes you can do, and yeah, it's a great place.
But also, Pennsylvania always strikes it kind of like Pittsburgh. So you got steel and, obviously the Steelers and steel work. And of course, the Penguins were, these, tough fighting team as well. What kind of influence would that have on someone growing up, especially who wants to go into sports, and especially a sport like cycling?
Yeah, this was not a soft city at all. And coincidentally, when I was young and just getting into cycling, we had a major professional race come to Pittsburgh called the Thrift Art Classic that I think Armstrong won, 4 years in a row or something like that. And it was, huge spectacle, but also like just an example maybe of like what could be possible for some young kid growing up in Pittsburgh. So to see, Lance in person back when he was, just getting started out, and yeah, it was pretty cool. It's a good city. It's a always evolving city, and I feel happy and satisfied to live here.
Joe, when did you start cycling?
I started cycling after my dad died in 1989 when I was just turned 14 years old.
Is there a connection between the two?
Say again, please?
Is there a connection between the two? Your pop passing and you taking up the sport of cycling?
For sure, my dad dying was the catalyst for me to be able to start cycling. I'd always been interested in bikes and knew a little bit about bike racing, but my family really wasn't very supportive of that idea. Because, like you said, growing up in Pittsburgh, it was a football town, a baseball town, a hockey town, definitely not a cycling town. But when my dad passed, my uncle, his brother, my dad literally died the day before my birthday. So my uncle was like, "Oh, what can I get you for your birthday that might ease your pain?" And I said, "How about a bike?" So he bought me a road bike, and that was the entry into the world of cycling.
When you're cycling, for example, with that close connection with your pop passing, was a connection with you being successful? Were you doing it for yourself or for your dad?
I was doing it for myself, but I was highly motivated by losing my dad. And that was obviously pretty traumatic, and it was something that kind of pulled back the curtain on what the world is like, right? So I was, very motivated, and very willing to do what seemed necessary to win.
Talking about that, Joe, doing what's necessary to win. Why do people dope? Is it just about winning?
Why do people dope? Yeah, I mean, to win, for status, for money. I mean, for me, it was never about money or fame. It was just to continue succeeding at the sport that I loved and derived a lot of satisfaction from, and placed a lot of worth in. I wouldn't have started doping if I didn't think that other people were doping as well. But ultimately, I was the one who made that choice, and I don't feel like I was misled or duped into doing it or anything like that.
I spoke with a few years ago, it was 2018, with Paul Kimmage. I interviewed him, and he interviewed me in Dublin. And his book Rough Ride had a very, very big impact on me, especially before my final exams in school.
Sure.
I read his book, and I really should have been studying at that time. But anyway, I don't think my parents would have been very happy knowing that I was reading a cyclist memoir instead of actually studying history. But anyway, I guess it was history in a way. But when I interviewed and spoke with him, he spoke about how he was very naive when he went to Europe. He went from, say, for example, racing in the milk race, or he was Ross Talton at the time, and he's a very good junior, and he was had the potential there, come from a cycling family. His dad had been a cyclist as well. And then he went to Europe, and suddenly his eyes were opened. And one thing he told me was he went over this like a briefcase, and everyone going, "Oh, he has his briefcase." And when he opened it up, inside he had like letter writing paper and envelopes and pens. And when the other guys opened their briefcases, they had drugs. Is that just Paul trying to?
No, totally legit, 100% legit. I mean, obviously I wasn't there for Paul's specific experience, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a black bag with compartments in it, and in each compartment was a different product. I didn't have that bag when I started cycling, and I didn't have that bag when I first turned professional. But yeah, eventually, after progressing up the ranks and being indoctrinated into what professionalism meant, I eventually had one too. I wanted, one thing I do want to say is I never did the same then to anybody else. I never tried to indoctrinate another rider into doping. I mean, my doping journey was mine alone, and it was not something I ever encouraged any of my teammates to partake in, or any of the younger riders I trained with or competed with.
That's an important thing, because it's something that I've spoken with athletes before. One ice hockey player who was going across, he was playing collegiate hockey in the States. He was going for the draft, and his agent told him, "You need to beef up," and told him who to go to see. Same kind of thing in cycling as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The specific individuals who introduced me to doping gave me the name and phone number of a doctor and her address, where to find her, and made the intro, and that was the first person who prescribed me EPO.
Wait, so this doctor, who obviously she's licensed.
Yep.
I don't know if she's still licensed or not. You can tell me if she is.
I don't know if she's still alive even.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. No. Okay. We'll move on from that one. Did she know what you were going to do? Because you're a healthy young guy. You didn't go in and say, "Oh, I think I have cancer," or "I had cancer."
Yeah, no, there was no subterfuge. On my part, it was upfront and honest, and she was very, yeah. I mean, there was no deceit or anything like that. She knew that I was a cyclist and that I wanted to boost my blood, and wrote me a script for the ProCrit brand of EPO.
Joe, when did you start doping? Joe, when did you start doping?
2001.
So you weren't a spring chicken. You were an adult man who made a decision to dope.
26 years old, and the specific context was that I had finished my undergraduate degree in university, and I'd won a fellowship in government and public affairs that I was pursuing in grad school, and decided to kind of leave that behind and go back to cycling. And after having been out of the highest level that I reached for a couple of years, so it's been a couple of years at that point that since I'd competed at the top national level here, and when I went back, it was not just a question of I wasn't race fit per se, but it was different. The speeds were faster. You could tell that something, or at least I perceived that something had changed. And in discussing it with my teammates at the time, they said, yes, something has changed, and here's how you undertake the changes that you need to take. And that was the referral to the doctor then.
So from, say, the mid to late 90s, you came back, you felt the difference. And I mean, I've heard of EPO being used long before that, and I had my own kind of strange introduction to the world. My first real introduction to this whole situation would have been, well, to a gentleman who was heading up sports medicine in Red Bull, Bernd Pansold, when they were administering injections to athletes. Do you remember the first moment you doped? The first time you made the injection?
Yeah, it was like the day that I picked up the prescription. So I had to drive to central Pennsylvania to meet with this doctor, and then drove home and dropped off the prescription at the pharmacy that evening, and picked it up the next day then, and took my first injection in my in my stomach, basically, because you administer it subcutaneously. And the next day, yeah. It takes like 4 weeks really for you to feel the impact, but that was my start down that road.
How strong was the effect? Because Paul Kimmich, for example, I get him. I just purely from a cycling point of view, Paul Kimmich said that he could, run through a wall. That that he just had huge amounts of energy, and that was more amphetamines that they were taking, the injections, the pills they were taking in the 80s. What was the effect of EPO, for example, and of course the testosterone that you use? What were the combined effects, Joe?
The effects for me were phenomenal, stunning, almost unbelievable. I mean, I think in one of the photos you have, you can see I was using a SRM power meter back in the day, so I understood my watts and knew what they meant, and I observed probably close to a 12% boost in my functional threshold power on EPO, and then adding testosterone to facilitate recovery and be able to produce the same effort the next day. That was stunning, really. I mean, just, yeah, the stuff works.
You'd said before about that, how it helps you recover, especially in stage races. So if it's like 6 days, for example, of Depan, or it's the Tour de France, or Giro, or Tour of Ireland. Is it possible to ride at the speeds that riders are riding at right now, clean?
It's certainly strange credulity, right, to believe that. I mean, wasn't this like the fastest Tour de France ever? And
yeah, and a lot of difficult climbs as well that they were flying up. So that was a strange one. How did, they said they're all clean now. We've seen, say, Team Ineos, the former Team Sky, and they're clean, and their owner, Jim Ratcliffe, who wants to buy Manchester United now, or says he did. He wanted to buy Chelsea not too long ago. Now he wants to buy United. He's saying that he would walk away from the team if they were caught doping or something, but you could still see the riders quickly recovering. Joe, what, for example, and we don't know, of course, we don't know what they're using or if they're using, but what would they be using? For example, if you were a corrupted soigneur or a team, like a director sportif, what would you have the guys on?
Yeah, I think if anything has changed, it's that it's not so much the Wild West as it used to be, where there was a doping free-for-all, basically. I mean, for sure, the controls are more sophisticated, they're more effective. The anti-doping movement is organized, different, more effective strategies to police doping, but the potential there is still there, and you don't necessarily need to have a 12% improvement to derive a benefit from doping. Like if you can get a 1 or 2% boost that your competitor doesn't get, then that's still an advantage. And so the same products really, or the same methods, blood boosting, hormones to facilitate recovery, corticosteroids to reduce inflammation, probably other newer products that are undetectable. It's the sport. It's still the sport, right? Like they still have to ride and race, and so the incentive is still there.
I mean, drugs don't make you cycle faster. They of course they do in a way, but if you're not a good bike rider, if I started using EPO and HGH right away, that's human growth hormone, I'd probably be dead in the morning. It would eventually make me a little slightly better cyclist, but not, you have to have the talent to begin with. When you were popped in 2006, I listened to something you said that what you got done for, you hadn't been using, that it wasn't in your system. Is that true, or was that just you kind of making it?
No, that is true. That's absolutely true, Alan. I tested positive for testosterone that I had not knowingly taken, but yet the control did not detect the EPO, the growth hormone, the corticosteroids. So no, I mean, I fully admit that I was doping, and they caught me, but they didn't catch me for what I was intentionally doping with.
Last part coming up, and this is his interactions with USADA, which is contradicted some of my own beliefs about USADA as well, and what I know about them and how I've dealt with them. So this is the last part of part one of this three-parter, and then we're going to come back with the three of us to discuss what Joe's talked about, and also have a little game for our guys to play. So keep your questions and comments coming in, and we'll answer them right after this. When you admitted to it, you owned up to it, you just said, okay, I did it. But then it seemed that the deal you'd worked out, 2-year ban, deal worked out, but they just still kind of wiped out your results. So people went to look for your results now, they'll say, they'll see that, where did this guy ride? What did he do? Because most of your results from 2001 to 2006 were wiped out. Why was that, Joe? Was it ever explained to you why?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it does, I think, have a fairly straightforward answer, which was that by testifying to having doped starting back in 2001, that even though I had an agreement for a shorter sanction, that USADA was obligated to strike those results going back to 2001. I mean, at the time, I was kind of annoyed because we did have a signed agreement that specified how many results I would lose, and when the sanction came out, it was different than that. But I mean, no big deal. I had been doping back into starting in 2001. So
yeah, so I mean, it wasn't the case like that. Wait, no, I only started doping then, and we, the
thing that annoyed me, the only thing that annoyed me was they didn't tell me they were going to do that beforehand, right? So we negotiated a deal, and then I provided my testimony, and then the sanction was different than what I expected. I mean, they could have handled it better, but in the end, the sanction was more than fair.
Joe, in saying that, I'm not a fan of Travis Tigert and a lot of things he's done, because I've spoken with people and dealt with people who've dealt with him, and they haven't, they don't trust him. And these are people from other heads of anti-doping agencies. Dick Pound, I'd always admired until sometimes I saw him, he was kind of flip-flopping. He was saying one thing to one audience and not to another. What's your view on the two of them and the others who are involved in anti-doping as well, the different heads of organizations and these experts or specialists, are they in it to clean up the sport?
Yeah, boy. Only man knows what's in in one man's heart or mind. My interaction with Travis, despite what I said about the sanction being different than what I expected, I mean, I found him to be very fair, straightforward, straight shooter, very motivated, in pursuing his mission. I can't speak for anybody else's interaction with him, but in working with him, I saw somebody who was very motivated to catch people doping and sanction them, and
again, I'm asking about your experience and your view, and that's exactly. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. You've answered the question perfectly. Exactly what is the right way to do it.
And maybe the difference too is when I got caught, I thought, oh, maybe I'll ask for the B sample, maybe I'll appeal this, but you pretty quickly realize the deck is very much stacked against an athlete who's accused of doping, and if you don't have tremendous resources to marshal in fighting that, it almost is a kind of a pointless battle to embark on. And so I conceded pretty quickly. I didn't consume a lot of their resources by fighting, ignobly against something that I knew I was guilty of, and maybe that may have influenced how they, USADA and Travis treated me in response. But yeah, I appreciate what he did to help me through the process, and
No, that's very, very fair. And it's something that I always wonder, because there's that kind of thing that it was with the former U.S. Attorney General at the time of Watergate, and I think it was Woodward and Bernstein said, deny, deny, deny. And it's like non-denial, denial. And we've seen it with Bill Clinton, I did not have sex with that, woman. And then the break, Monica Lewinsky, it was Tony Blair did the same as well. We see it all the time. Politicians and athletes, when athletes getting caught doping, they will deny it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My mentor and substitute father figure for a long time, Mike Frazee, who was the president of the U.S. Cycling Federation, that was before he even knew I was doping. I think he gave me that advice. Don't ever admit culpability, because if you do, you basically deny the half of the people who would support you, no matter what the illusion of why they should support you. So that was actually what kind of broke our relationship, when I told him that I was going to accept what I had done, went against kind of his ethos, and that was it. Didn't talk to him again. And
Joe, did you want to get caught?
No, I don't think I wanted to get caught. But when I got caught, I didn't feel like. That's a really good question. I definitely did not try to get caught. I hid my tracks, and certainly wasn't trying to leave, breadcrumbs to me. But it was a relief to get caught and just know then that I was out at that point, or would be out.
Because when you see with, Lance Armstrong or many athletes who we'll see even with, different tennis players, and I heard this from a tennis player I used to work with, and she ran away from testers, and the testers couldn't do anything, and the whole situation and I was told is, you never take a test that you'll fail. Better to get a strike than to fail a test. Did that ever come to your mind, that maybe you should have just not given the test? Or
oh yeah. Great question, Alan. We tried to subvert the control that I tested positive in for many minutes. I had synthetic urine that we tried to turn in instead of an actual biological sample. Then we tried to spike the biological sample. Tried to, bamboozle the poor doctor who was in charge of the control. No, we tried everything we could for me not to test positive. And I'm not making that up. We used to travel with a synthetic urine mix that we always took into the drug controls. And, my team minder was trying to distract the doctor while I was reconstituting it. And So yeah, I should have been done just for that, trying to thwart the control, but yeah. So when I said that they said I tested positive for testosterone, even though I hadn't knowingly taken that, I thought, well, fair play to you. I did try to not even provide a legitimate sample. So what a world, though, right? Like that's part of.
I mean,
it's insane.
I mean, and if we think about it, it's all about riding a bike, something that you began as a sort of forgive me for saying this, as a compensation for losing your dad.
Oh yeah, it was a way to cope with it emotionally, and something that I did, to get into a better place.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up trying to use synthetic mixed urine to.
Dude, they wanted to catheterize me before. My team was like, can we catheterize you so that you could just pee you can excrete the synthetic urine directly? And I was like, no, it's a bridge too far.
It's like with Mike Tyson when he said that they had like a plastic or a rubber penis in his shorts, and he had his baby's urine in the penis, and you just squeezed it out like you milk a cow. The first time I ever had a drug test, it took me so long to pee. It took a long time because I was dehydrated. I was very nervous as well. You know how it is. It's a very strange situation when a man is sitting there on a stool looking at your member.
Yeah.
And it's just it's bad enough. Men know who listen to this. It's bad enough when there's someone at the stall next to you. Even in the next village, someone's taking a pee at the same time, you feel a bit nervous. It's hard to let it flow. And then they drop the sample. The guy dropped it on the floor. And since you have to do it again, I was 18, 19? I was 18, 19, and I was crying. I had enough fluid to cry, but I didn't have fluid. Anyway,
it's to effectively to convey to somebody who hasn't been in that environment. It's so difficult. It is such a weird world, right? Like, in just that, you have to provide the sample in front of somebody so that they can see that you don't have a synthetic appendage. And it's just, and nobody starts out in any sport thinking, oh, I really want to be a doper. I really want to I want to learn how to, bypass anti-doping controls, right? Like, nobody starts out with that goal.
Nobody starts out with that goal to be a doper. That's I wanted to end that segment off on that, because it is the truth. No child starts out to do that. They end up having to do it to compete. Joe didn't justify what he did, but Isolt, before we a couple of comments and questions that are in, I'm going to load in that, Isolt, what was most remarkable about Joe's initial journey through cycling, then doping, and then anti-doping?
I think there's a lot of obviously it's very candid in what he's saying, which is very, very important, because irrespective of the fact that you have for an extended period of time doped, at the other side, what actually matters is that if someone is caught, that they're providing something, as he said, his testimony to USADA, back to enable testers to get it right with someone else. And I suppose even what he was saying, was so frightening to think that he tested positive for something that he actually was going, actually, that's not something I'm intentionally doping with. So it missed all the other stuff. But for me, the most striking comment he made was at the start of the interview, he said how he then became introduced to professionalism and being a professional cyclist. And even the way he said it, whether it's just because of the way it was phrased, like being a professional cyclist, in the era he became a professional cyclist, that to him equated with part of the professionalism was doping. And it's something that's so endemic in boxing, in cycling, that when you think of it like that, even the small references to say, I became a professional cyclist and I discovered what it meant to be a professional cyclist. That's the mentality, and that's the issue in the culture, that no matter how many people you root out and suspend and how many people are caught, there's still going to be a lot more that are getting away with it. And even it was really, really interesting to listen to the whole thing, but in particular, like you hear how he describes, it seemed almost instant once you became a professional. and also the fact that a doctor is aware of what he's looking for a prescription for. You have, irrespective of whether someone's a professional athlete and you know they're going off to dope, you have a duty of care to that person as a patient.
It's
That's
this
fine.
this
And yeah, it's a referral to a GP. This isn't like
yeah.
favorite doctors on the Tour de France who are just, you're specifically going to them. It's a referral, which makes it a bit of a more different. You're going saying, this is what I'm looking for. You know, I'm a professional cyclist, so you know why I'm doing it.
And look, she's making a lot of money from it as well. There's no two ways about it. That's how it works in sport, in American sport, or American medicine especially. Keane, we saw the same, for example, with the Dr. Bonner, which died a death as soon as the Champions League started on the Tuesday. But what, in terms of like footballers doping, Leicester City and Arsenal and so on, and probably Spurs as well, but they're taking a runtime of doping. But Keane, what struck home to you most in part one with Joe?
His honesty, Alan, was absolutely incredible. I mean, yeah, he admitted it, that, yeah, he doped quite literally, very, very, quite literally at the start of his career. He doped, and he admitted that it was for prestige. It's incredibly open and honest and refreshing to hear that it was for prestige he did it, and for different things, because you never hear that. You certainly don't hear that in modern times. They'll deny all responsibility. That never happened, and it's wiped away very, very fast. But it's very, very refreshing for me to hear such openness and such honesty, and certainly that from the beginning of his career, that he knew this was going to be part of it. He got involved in it, and as I said at the very start, mainly for prestige, and that definitely stuck out for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when I spoke with, like, when he said his dad died right before his birthday, his uncle to cheer him up bought him a bike. The bike led him to that. So for me, it was like a direct line. And later on in part 3 of the interview, stuff that happened all as a result. I mean, it's not a very, it's a linear journey in where he's been and where he gets to, but it really has some big ups and downs. And it'll be more interesting. A couple of comments, well, a few comments come in. Our own Andrew Flint's over in Turkey. So Andy, howdy. And Isel, I'm going to ask Keane first and then Isel to this. As Andrew says, how much bitterness is there among clean cyclists about those that clearly have gained advantages? Keane, there are instances of clean cyclists being forced out of Tour de France, for example, or out of cycling. How bitter could they be, or should they be?
Extremely bitter, I'm sure, because as you pointed out at the start, none of them wanted to do it, but it was quite literally nearly like handing someone a jersey. Right, I'll hand you a vial immediately as soon as you arrive into a team. So I'm sure there are, for all the clean cyclists, there is a huge amount of bitterness. It's very, very tough to stomach. I'm sure that if your career ends and you hear a direct competitor of yours over the years, if it comes out in the aftermath that he or she was doping, I'm sure it's an extremely bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, Isolt, to you, I mean,
well,
how would cyclists feel, or athletes feel, not just cyclists, because this is not just cycling.
So there's a lot of complexity to it. If you were a clean athlete, someone who was caught doping, as I suppose we heard from Joe, retrospectively he had records wiped further than he understood would be the case. You also are leaving yourself open to, while you may have got the benefits of let's say winning or success as a result and a direct consequence of your doping, you leave yourself open to, as Lance Armstrong has learnt, a lot of backlash, the potential for claims to be taken against you by former sponsors or people who are involved in your success because of the damage your doping or being found to have doped does to their reputation, and indeed deals which you may have had with them at the time. So yes, I can understand there'd be a huge amount of bitterness, and I think that would be across all sports, but one would think that the risks to a cyclist or any athlete who is found to have doped and the damage it does to their reputation into the future, and understandably so, unless they want to do something to give back, is huge. So the risk reward game you're playing is just, it's a very dangerous one, because the consequences of you being caught, it's a lifelong thing. That doesn't go away. Your records and your victories are temporary, and your star.
That is very, very true. And the cyclist mentioned was Christophe Bassons. He's a French cyclist who's part of the Festina team, who was the guys who were doping were saying he's the only one who didn't dope. And he was then attacked and bullied by Lance Armstrong out of cycling. No, this is what has been played. This is what is accepted as being the truth. Now, and if you, like, Joe knows Lance Armstrong, he'll speak with that like in the next section as well. One more small question that we have in. Well, look, it's kind of the same. Professional cycling is so dirty. Is other sports the same? Yeah, I think we've answered that. Yeah, the other sports the same. Okay, Isolde, you have a moment. You want to just quickly say about the UFC yesterday.
So last night, Leon Edwards, after 7 years ago, he lost in a decision to Usman. Right after winning, I would say, the first round, and then proceeding to be clearly behind on the scorecards with up to maybe 20 seconds to go, he pulled off the finish of the year. I don't think it would be beaten, with a kick to the head to take the title from Usman. And Usman was kind of seen on the floor as he came to afterwards and appeared to be mouthing, "Are you kidding me?" But a huge victory for Leon Edwards. And Leon Edwards has been a very forgotten man in British UFC, in the sense that he has had a very tough time with fans. At one stage, he was booed going out to UFC London, not the last one. But he's not the mouthiest on the mic or anything. So he doesn't do what Darren Till does and push his profile. So it was huge for him. Good for British MMA. And also, I'm just going to mention, comparatively with what went on in AJ's corner last night, AJ was having yes men telling him he was winning every round. Poor Leon. His corner were being very clear on the fact that he was not winning going into that final round, and he was aware of what he needed to do, and he did it.
Okay. I mean, it was an interesting finish, that one. So I said kick to the head, big finish. So it was very good. Okay, so now very quickly we're going to go out not going to go out. First, we have a Pick Faculty quiz, and I'm going to give you both. You both have a chance to get 10 points from this one, right? And then I'll give you one more chance. So 10 points from this one. This is what happens next. Okay, so I'm going to play it and then stop at a certain point. You tell me what happens next. It's baseball. It's very good.
On the Braves bench, bouncing ball to first. Bell will step.
So I'll play it again.
On the Braves bench, bouncing ball to first. Bell will step on the bag.
So ball bobbles to first, thrown to second to get the runner out. Of course, the man is moving off the home plate as well. I'll do ladies first. So Isolde, what happened next?
Smacks a guy on the head. Smacks a guy on the head and he goes clean out.
Who? The guy who throws the first baseman?
Let's go with him. He seems like a good option.
Right, so he smashed the head and we go, okay, fair enough. So, okay. Keane.
Somebody in the crowd comes onto the field or something obscure like that. One thing I spotted with something like this.
Is there a vote? I think Isolde's kind of closer to it. But is there a vote? You aren't getting a point. This is what happens next. It's fun, people. Watch this.
On the Braves bench, bouncing ball to first. Bell will step on the bag. He'll throw wide of second. Run down. Now you got a chance to steal a run. Now the peg to the plate. Another pickle. Heredia between third and home. Still in it. Still in it. Still in it. And the catcher gets in the way. Now a run down between second and third, but we got a dead ball. We got a dead ball. Yeah.
You couldn't have predicted that. I'm sorry. It was very cruel.
Describe that.
It's just you couldn't script it. What happened? I mean, it's just right. So you will have a chance to get this and so. This is a question on the Vuelta de España. Of course, Sam Bennett has got 2 wins already, 2 sprints, the stage wins. So, Isolt, odd one out. 26, 3, 183. 26, 3, or 183.
I'm going to go with 3.
You should have gone with 26. It should have been 28, actually. That's the number of stage wins by an Irish cyclist. 3 are Estonia and Austria.
Hold on. It should have been 28. So basically, you got the wrong numbers. I will take my points. Thank you.
I'll give you a point. I'm not giving you full points, Cecil. No.
You have to give her full points for that.
No.
You hit the wrong marks.
Was
Right, I'll give her 4 points. 4 points. There we go. 4 points. Right,
5 and we
right. Okay, Keane, for you. Alex Zula, Tony Rominger, or Primoz Roglic. So Zula, Rominger, or Roglic?
Second man, you said.
Tony Rominger. No, it's actually the last man. He's the only one that's still active. So there you go. All right, and Isolt, this is going for both of you. You both have a chance to say who's the other one out. Roberto Heras, Nairo Quintana, who just got popped the course for a tramadol, which we'll actually speak about next week with Joe Papp, or Chris Froome. Who do you think is the other one out, Isolt?
I'm going to go with Quintana.
Oh, okay, interesting. Keane.
Chris Froome.
Yes, they're both wrong, which means actually gives Isolt the win. It's Roberto Heras, because he's won the most Vueltas with 4. Nairo Quintana has won 1, and Chris Froome has won 2. There you go. So very simple. So on that note, I'll say, Keane, thank you very much for your time this evening. Isolt, thank you as always. Great show. Thank you both very much.
No bother at all. No problem.
Thank you. Folks, so next week we'll go way into the good night, which is all a super week ahead. And of course, next week we'll have part 2 of our interview with Joe Papp. It's really, really well worth tuning in for. If you enjoyed the first part, second part gets even better. Third part is a blockbuster, but really, really get on to the second part. You will enjoy it. So on that, I will say good night to everybody. And of course, speak with you all next week from 9 p.m. CET on Capital Sports 3.0. I'm Alan Moore saying take care of yourselves and each other.